Welcome to the 2026 Dialogue, a masterclass series by the HR Association of India. I am Neha Jagnani, and today we are exploring a theme that sits at the heart of every successful organization: how business strategy becomes truly impactful when it is deeply rooted in people. Our theme for the session today is the human side of business strategy. To explore this, we are joined by Tanvi Choksi. Tanvi is the Chief People Officer at Savills APAC, with over 20 years of experience in transforming HR across global organizations. She brings cross industry expertise spanning automobiles, pharmaceuticals, medical devices, consumer agriculture, and real estate. Known for aligning business goals with people centric strategies, she specializes in talent management, learning and development, and organizational design. Tanvi has consistently enabled organizations to be recognized as great place to work. Tanvi, thank you so much for joining. It's a pleasure having you.
Thank you so much, Neha. It's been a pleasure to be invited by you guys for this as well, and I'm looking forward to our chat.
Sure, thank you so much. I look forward to this exciting masterclass, Tanvi. So to begin with, my first question is business strategies, often focuses on numbers and growth. So I want to know, how do you ensure that the human side is equally prioritized in decision making?
Right. And firstly, Neha, that's a really good question, and I'm very, happy to share some of my thoughts in the next, little while and just have this conversation. The first thing I would say is people strategy, firstly, is not only about culture or engagement in isolation. It is about driving business outcomes through human capability, behaviors, and leadership, right? And that's a little bit of a theme you'll hear as I talk through, uh, you know, business strategy and people strategy and how does that interlink, how does those two interlink amongst one another. Now, coming more specifically to your question about numbers and the human side, I would say, firstly, I don't see the human side as separate from business outcome. The real question in my mind is, are we measuring the right thing? And you know what, we always see that in most organizations, we track revenue, margin, pipeline of deals, all of that in a very, very good and strong manner. We have systems, processes to track all of that really well, to review it. But we do not really track or measure leadership quality, collaboration, or capability depth with the same rigor. And when I say capability, I mean talent capability, right? Or people capability depth with the same rigor. And for me, prioritizing the human side really means embedding all these measurements into business reviews. And if we can link talent decisions, leadership behavior, and culture directly to performance outcomes by tracking those as well, the numbers will look really different, according to me. And we won't be having this debate of numbers are different from human side, right? Because there can be some numbers there too. And lastly, my only comment is numbers actually don't deliver themselves. It is actually the people who deliver the numbers. So how do we measure that capability and that? And that makes a big difference.
Sure, thank you so much. Beautifully put. My personal takeaway was that you don't see people from a different lens. It's about that holistic view where people is there by default. People are there by default. The game changers are leadership behaviors, talent management,
Yeah.
and collaboration that kind of combines everything and gives you the results. So thank you so much. My next question, Tanvi, is leading people strategy across multiple countries. What are the biggest challenges in aligning culture with business goals across diverse markets?
Yeah, very interesting question and something I'm personally very passionate about. See, I think the biggest mistake global organizations make is many times they try to standardize culture. And I don't think culture can be standardized. Culture is truly experienced locally, right? So each country has their own unique way of doing things, a unique way of being there. And that is the culture that is experienced locally. You cannot standardize. So we mistake the two words. Culture has to be local, but the strategy has to be global. And therefore, we have to focus on what are the non negotiables in a company. And I think those should be things like, what are our values? Can we have consistency there? How do we lead our people and team? That leadership style, it can be consistent and standard. And how do we collaborate? And again, that we can do through processes, systems, and standardization. But after we have those non-negotiables aligned and standardized, allowing markets to interpret those in ways that are culturally relevant to them is something that is really important. And if we can find that balance, then it really becomes a very powerful tool for organizations where they don't lose the culture or the local nuances. At the same time, they have consistency or standardization in terms of how they come across as leaders and stuff like that. So I genuinely think it doesn't come from uniformity, but it comes from shared intent and consistent leadership behavior that you can create a great culture and then leave the local nuances to be different.
Sure, sure. So you're saying the overall values has to be the same, but you cannot
Yeah.
standardize that in different markets. The values system, and it's basically about finding the right balance in different markets. So thank you so much. My next question, Tanvi, is in large global organizations, how can leaders balance performance pressure with employee experience and well-being?
So again, maybe I don't know if it's a different view, but firstly, I don't think high performance and well-being are opposing forces. I think they're always talked about like that because we feel like if it is high performance means pressure, means something and that is opposite to well-being. I absolutely don't agree. I think they both go really hand in hand. I think what creates the tension between the two is very simply poor leadership that creates the tension. So in high performing teams, if we think about it, right, what are the characteristics of a high performing team? There is clarity, trust, and accountability. The minute you have those three things, you actually reduce burnout and you actually create an environment where everyone feels respected, trusted, and therefore can bring their best self to work in a non-pressure environment, right? So the real shift leaders need to actually make is they're too focused on managing the output. If they can start managing energy, managing where the focus of the teams needs to be, and what the priorities are that they need to deliver, the outputs will happen if we have the right process as well, right? And then sustained performance will come from how people work, not just how hard they work. And I think sometimes leaders or not great leaders lose that ability to differentiate hard work from good work. And if that gets confused, then we have all of these tensions of well-being and performance and all of these being on different sides. So I think it's quite simple. If you can build clarity, trust, and accountability, and if the leader can provide focus and clarity, you will not have this issue of this being a trade-off.
Sure. Clarity, trust, and accountability truly can actually create a culture, an ecosystem where people can thrive. As you rightly said, there will be not no burnout and people feel respected and valued. So thank you so much. My next question, Tanvi, is what role does leadership play in translating business strategy into meaningful employee experience on ground?
Um, again, first, I would say sometimes when we talk about employee experience, right, it feels like this is something HR needs to do, or this is something that a department needs to think about and implement for the whole organization. And I think by the very definition of experience, right, it is something that you feel every day, or you come to work every day, and how you interact with your peer group, with your manager, with people who sit around you actually brings employee experience. So, I don't like to talk about it as if it's a centrally designed thing that you can do and it just works. In reality, it is delivered every single day by a leader, by a manager, and by a peer that is sitting next to you and interacting with you, right? So I think that firstly we need to understand and realize. And then second is, I feel strategy gets translated or diluted at the leadership level. So, what is the role of a leader to communicate that strategy every day? And I think we don't talk enough about communication and how important it is for a leader to really be able to understand what the strategy is. And when I say leader, it's at every level, right? Because every level is going to speak to the next level to communicate, and then therefore they need to translate it, reinforce it, keep talking about it. So the leader role of leadership in that communication is extremely important. But beyond communication, it is also about how decisions are made, how feedback is given, and how people feel supported. That's where the experience happens. Because you can communicate saying this is what corporate has said, this is what we need to deliver. But if the decisions that are getting made are not in sync with that, it doesn't work. I'll give you one example in that. One of my previous companies I worked for had a very, very strong compliance message that was coming from the top. There had been some issues in the past, and they really wanted to change their focus and really drive compliance. And therefore, there was lots of training, there was lots of messaging, etc. But if your manager is not holding you accountable and saying, let's lose this business because this is non-compliant for us to do, or let's not go ahead and, if it's very focused on number delivery alone, but not the how the numbers are going to be delivered, then the decision is not synced with the communication that's happening. And therefore, it'll never be the same experience. So you ask that employee, are we a compliant organization? He or she is going to very likely say, not really, because his or her experience of that decision is very different
Sure.
from the communication that's coming out. So I think, if leadership behavior doesn't align with strategy, there is no program and no system that can compensate for that. And I think it's that experience every day that makes it.
Sure, beautifully put. So 3 points here for employee experience. Firstly, it is not in HR's responsibilities. It is everybody's responsibility, and it reflects in your everyday actions. Second, communicating the strategy becomes the key. And lastly, the decisions that you make needs to be aligned with the employees, and how you take feedback, how you make sure that the opinions, the inputs are valued and taken into consideration for decisions becomes the key. And great example there, reflecting that accountability is the key whenever anything is implemented. So this brings us to the last question, Tanvi, which is, if you have to give one message to business leaders, what should they do differently to truly integrate people into strategy and not just execution?
So, my one message, if I could give to all business leaders, would be stop treating people strategy as something that supports the business. According to me, it is the business. Because, like I said, numbers don't deliver themselves, people do. And if we think people strategy is separate from business, I think we're starting at the wrong point completely. And I would also add that, organizations that actually win are those that understand capability, leadership, and culture are not soft levers that are good to have. These are extremely important, and they can really be the hardest drivers for growth, resilience, and differentiation. So I think if the leaders are able to really harness the power of capability, leadership, and culture, they would have a very, very different organization. And I would say as much effort as business leaders put on measuring numbers, measuring outcomes, if they can put some ways to measure capability, leadership, culture, and make that into core metrics that they are also driving and supporting, they will see a very, very different organization and a very, very different outcome of that. So that would be my biggest ask. I think we need more business leaders to measure people metrics.
Sure, absolutely. Beautiful takeaways. Capability, leadership, and culture uh, is something that needs to be harnessed to kind of integrate people into the system and make sure that people are valued and there is a sense of belonging and not just thriving as performers, but also people having a sense of belonging at their workplace. So thank you so much, Tanvi. This brings us to the end of the masterclass, and today's dialogue has actually highlighted an important truth that business strategy is not just shaped in numbers, but it's experienced by people every single day. And if organization put people at the center of the strategy, I think they are creating cultures where people thrive and cultures that can sustain those performances. So thank you so much for your inputs today.
Absolutely, Neha. Thank you so much. It was my pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. My pleasure, Tanvi. Thanks a lot.
Take care.
Take care. Bye.